is Wink Tracks the Tropics, powered by the Weather Authority.
When the tropics are active, timing is everything. The Weather Authority is keeping you prepared.
The latest update did come in from the National Hurricane Center. Helene moving north-northeast. Winds have increased up to 90 miles per hour.
Keeping you informed.
It's now 170 miles northwest of us. And as we had mentioned, this is a major Cat 4 hurricane. This is going to have major landfall implications.
Southwest Florida has seen its fair share of storms in the past few years.
We are leaving immediately after this because it is not safe. You're starting to see some of these debris, sticks flying up and out, and it's one of the reasons why Sanibel is evacuated. It clearly is not safe out here.
But our slice of paradise has bounced back in ways we'd never expect.
It was tough.
We had each other, and that's a good thing.
I wouldn't have made it without Marianne. We're gonna make it, though. We're gonna make it.
Wink News has been there with you every step of the way, and that won't change.
Yes, we avoid the worst part of the storm, but the wind field's growing and the pressures are deepening. We're going to feel more of that influence on the back end with the surge.
From forecast cones to important safety reminders, the Weather Authority has you covered. You're watching Wink Tracks the Tropics. Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to Wink Tracks the Tropics. I'm Wink's Weather Authority, Val Simpson. And today we're going to talk about, we have Jerry still in the Atlantic, and then Karen sneaked up on us last night. We're going to touch on that. And of course, there's a front headed our way here locally that's going to bring us some really nice, cooler, drier conditions. And we're going to be talking about that today. So if you do have plans for this weekend, or if you don't, you better start making them because it's going to be a fabulous weekend for outdoor activities. And we're going to start off today with the question of the day. And it says, we have two storms in the Atlantic. Which one do you think sounds more intimidating, Jerry or Karen? So let's go ahead and punch our panel of Mets right here. Hi, guys. Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday.
Super excited about this streaming show, number one, because it lands on a Friday. And number two, because Karen has joined the party.
She has. She crashed the party.
What do you guys think in terms of which storm sounds more intimidating?
I know what the ladies are going to say, so I'm going to say Jerry. I'm going to say Jerry, just
you
for
say
Jerry
Jerry?
Seinfeld, just for fun of it, you know. I don't,
But all Jerrys are like, I feel like they're pretty fun. Like Jerry Seinfeld, he's funny.
Jerry,
I wouldn't be
so
scared of
Jerry,
him.
the storm is stronger, so I'm going to say Jerry.
I guess that's true.
I'm gonna
It
say
is.
Jerry.
It's true. Jerry is stronger, but Karen might want to ask to see the manager. Does it?
Yeah.
That joke I can't take credit for that. That joke was just landing on my lap. Okay, guys, let's go ahead and do a little review of what's going on right now with our weather outlook. I'm going to punch that graphic in for you right now so that we can talk a little bit about what we're seeing, because things have changed since yesterday morning. Tropical Storm Jerry still out there, as you can see, spinning. But here's the thing. It's not going to become a Cat 1 hurricane. That's very different than what we were saying yesterday. So that's the newest update. And then also, Tropical Storm Karen has formed last night. Yesterday, we were talking about an area of possible development. It only had a 10% chance, but through the day, that had increased. And then last night, it became Subtropical Storm Karen. So let's do a quick little review of what we've seen this far during this hurricane season. And well, Karen became the 11th storm of this hurricane season. As you can see, we still have those 4 hurricanes. I guess Jerry is not going to be added to the list. It would have become our 5th. And then major hurricanes, 3. The next name on the list would be Lorenzo. So we're going to continue to watch the tropics because obviously hurricane season is not yet over. And here is a little recap of what we're seeing with Tropical Storm Jerry. As you can see, it's losing some of its intensity. Yesterday when we had the streaming show, we were telling you that it had max sustained winds of 65 miles per hour. Notice how now that has gone down to 50 miles per hour, but it continues to move in that same direction, northwest, and it's moving just a little bit slower at 16 miles per hour. It is producing a lot of rain for the Lesser Antilles there, and it's going to continue to move in this direction north before it makes that turn to the east finally sometime by Monday morning or Sunday into Monday, as you can see, before it continues to lose some of that intensity. Now, it is very possible that Jerry will produce some high surf and rip currents for the Leeward Islands, the Virgin Islands, and the and Puerto Rico as it continues to move in that direction. And now let's go ahead and take a look and see where we have Karen. So Karen is up in the northern Atlantic. It's actually one of our furthest storms in this area that has formed. It has max sustained winds of 45 miles per hour. It's moving northeast at 13 miles per hour, as you can see. Now, something very interesting is that subtropical storms usually have a little bit of both characteristics. They tend to form in cooler waters, and they, unlike a tropical storm, they feed off the difference in that temperature in the atmosphere. And what we know about Karen is that it has a very cold air aloft, which is providing that instability. So could, Karen become tropical? It could if it were to move into warmer waters and then become better organized. But this is not the case because it's going to be opening up into a trough and then get absorbed by a front. So we don't expect Karen to be becoming tropical anytime soon. I do want to mention, and I want to show you this, because as far as where our hot spots are located, it's not unlikely to see something form in that region, in that area. Take a look, everything that's in yellow, that's where we can possibly see some development. So that kind of just hits that for us right there. So I want to go ahead and bring everybody back on. Hello guys. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between, what we're seeing with Jerry, which is tropical, and what we're seeing with Karen, which is subtropical. What is one of the biggest difference that you see here?
I'm going to jump in real quick on the Karen thing. Obviously, subtropical versus tropical versus extratropical, always a little confusing for not only just individuals who watch the weather, but also sometimes even just meteorologists. I often forget what exactly are the exact characteristics of every single type of area of low pressure. Extratropical is just basically what we see in those areas of low pressure that move across the United States. There's no feature of any water feeding it whatsoever. It feeds on air masses alone. Then you have the subtropical, which feeds off of water temperatures that have to be at or above 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So you have to have at least some warmer water temperatures to get a subtropical system. Basically, it's when an extratropical system, a low pressure system that feeds off of the air masses, the lows, possibly even some fronts, when it moves into an area where the water is just still a little on the warmer side, above 70 degrees, we could get that subtropical variation of it. And then, as you mentioned, the tropical systems are when those water temperatures are above 80, which would really allow more thunderstorm development near the center of the core and where the storm and low pressure feeds directly off of the warmer water temperatures evaporating and allowing energy to form into the system. So kind of a cool difference on all three type of lows that we track. Most of the time we're watching just extratropical lows move across the country. In fact, that extratropical low that has the front south of the state today is one that could become that nor'easter that we'll talk about later on. But always just neat, but also confusing to have extratropical, subtropical, and then purely tropical lows and what their differences are.
Absolutely. And just focusing on Tropical Storm Jerry, because yesterday morning we were saying that there was a possibility that it could become a Cat 1 hurricane. What's Jerry dealing with that it's not allowing it to intensify? Do you guys, what do you think? What are your thoughts? What do you think is a reason why it's not coming to a Cat 1 hurricane? Could it be shear, or maybe waters might be cooling? What do you guys think?
Well, I think definitely shear could be a possibility when it comes to Jerry not making that hurricane status. Last I checked, as I wasn't able to see the 11 a.m. advisory since we were getting ready for this show, but with the previous advisory from the National Hurricane Center, it looked like Jerry was just going to be right under that threshold for a Cat 1 storm with sustained winds of 70 miles per hour early Monday morning, and that threshold is at 74 miles per hour. So it's right there, and I think that is going to continue to hold steady with the next couple of advisories. So it's not going to make that hurricane status, but it's just going to be right under it.
Yeah, when I was reading the discussion earlier and just looking at the shear profile of Jerry by itself, it's moving directly into wind shear. So it's trying to move off towards the west-northwest. The wind shear from the big trough across the entire eastern half of the country is actually diving in from the northwest. So both are kind of going against each other right now. That's ultimately going to allow Jerry to turn to the northeast, but it's what has kept Jerry's exposed center basically on the weak side. As you said yesterday, it was a 65 mile per hour tropical storm. It looked a lot more organized on
yeah.
satellite yesterday. It
Yeah.
looks very ragged, very unassembled today, and no wonder why its strength has gone down. Shear is a massive component and proponent for weakening, and we're going to see that over the coming days with Jerry.
Yeah, I think it's already gone down in wind speed as of the 11 a.m. I think it's down at 50 miles per hour right now?
Yeah, it was at 50 at 5 a.m. this morning. So
Okay.
yeah, it's been around that 50 range, which is
He's struggling.
yeah, just almost 11 miles per hour above tropical storm strength when you think about that. So if we're talking about thresholds too, it's very weak at this hour, and as you can tell, it looks very disorganized. The center is actually on that far northwestern corner, but because you have that shear component moving in from the northwest, it is causing those showers and storms to be very far south and east of where the actual center of the storm is. I don't think water temperatures have played. It's very warm. The water temperatures are definitely above 80. So if we're above 80, the water temperatures are not a concern. It's 100% a shear issue that is causing this lack of further strengthening within Jerry.
Guys, as you know, this is an interactive platform, and we are live right now on YouTube. We have some comments coming in, so I'm going to go ahead and read some of these. We have Uber Cow says, Jerry no longer interested in bothering Tom, and he has Karen now to bug. So I guess that it's a play on words, Jerry, Tom, Karen. We got a lot going on there. Thank you, Uber Cow. Tim is saying, well, right now, I guess that these are the storms that they considered intimidating. It says, well, right now, Karen. But as long as we don't make it to Wendy, we'll be fine. He says, my ex-wife was Wendy. Chaos, destruction, and financial devastation. Just kidding. That's a big right down here. The comments are super funny. Ken Smiley just logged in. He says, good morning, all.
Good morning.
To you guys. Very good. Okay. And he's watching from Estero. Shout out to our peeps in Estero there. Guys, something that was surprising to me was that yesterday at this time we were saying that Karen was just an area that had a 10% chance of development, and then all of a sudden it blew up. Is that normal? Is it common to see such a fast intensification to a subtropical storm?
I would say so, just because the 10% area yesterday, it was an extra tropical cyclone. So there already was wind speeds in that 30 to 40 mile per hour range within that low. So it didn't strengthen at all. It didn't develop more. It just developed subtropically because it moved over water temperatures that were at or above 70. I was looking into the North Atlantic water temperatures so far this morning. It does get very messy in terms of the water temperatures do vary greatly in temperature-wise across the Northern Atlantic. In fact, when Karen formed, it formed at 44.5 degrees north latitude. And that's the farthest north a subtropical storm has ever developed in the entire history of us tracking the tropics. And in terms of recent storms, we had Laura that formed about 42 degrees north latitude back in 2008. And then we had an unnamed storm back in 1958 that was right around 43.6 degrees north during the before the satellite era. I think it was 56 to 58 before the satellite era. So we can see systems that far north, but it's very rare that I think what Karen did, it moved over that threshold, and with the slightly warmer water temperatures, it popped a few towering cumulus clouds near the center, and boom, the National Hurricane Center said, okay, it's subtropical, let's give it a name. And I think that's why it went straight from 10% to that, only because of that varying water temperature that was up in that region. Nothing else would explain it. It's not like it was nothing and it became something. It was something. It was an extratropical cyclone that just moved over the slightly warmer water temperatures. And once you had that one convection tower pop up near the center, I think that's what prompted them to go ahead and give it a name.
So my next question is, and I touched on this just a little bit ago, but my next question is, could it become tropical? And yes, go ahead.
Yeah,
Nick.
no.
Well, yeah, it's not going to become tropical, but a lot of times you will see tropical systems become subtropical when they move into those cooler waters. But it's in a cooler part of the Atlantic, so it's not likely to be able to gain those tropical characteristics.
Gotcha, understood. And then let's talk about the wind
It's moving
field.
farther and farther north right now, too,
Right.
moving even into even cooler water. I think it was 46 degrees north latitude now, so it's moving due north. It has a better chance of interacting with the polar bears than anyone else, that's for sure.
Guys, one of the biggest difference also is the wind field when we talk about a tropical and a subtropical. Can you guys touch on that a little bit?
Well, with tropical systems, they're more symmetric, and if you look at a subtropical storm. They're a little bit more asymmetric. Is that? Did I have that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I was like, I'm double thinking myself. So they definitely look a little different, but I actually really liked the satellite view that we had of Karen earlier. It looked like a little mini storm, and if you could see it, it had like the little thing, but it's definitely not symmetric. And honestly, if we're looking at Jerry has looked pretty lopsided lately as well because of that eye that's really not even very well defined, and it's very far in the northwest corner. But I think the biggest difference in terms of the wind fields has to do with the symmetric.
Yeah, Val, do you have, I don't know if you have it loaded in your show, do you have just a random view of the visible satellites? Just because it would be neat to see how small and tiny Karen is, what Oceana just mentioned, just because of how it still has a surface circulation, but again, it does have that very exposed circulation just because it's kind of that, it's almost a hybrid system. When you think of extratropical lows, you think of snowstorms in Iowa and how massive those wind fields are that cover states hundreds and hundreds of miles, sometimes 500-600 miles wide of those wind fields. And tropical systems, hurricanes, have wind fields that are more combined and a little bit smaller. Obviously, when storms get bigger and bigger, it's usually when they begin to fall apart and unravel. So it is neat to see that we go from the smallest wind fields to bigger and bigger when we start adding these extra type of dynamics to these areas of low pressure.
Yeah, I'm having an issue bringing up the satellite because it's not paused in that satellite. It has the play button, all right, so it's going right straight to the
I just wanted
phone.
to double check, just because it would be, just when she mentioned it, I was like, oh, I wonder. Yeah.
I owe it to you guys. I owe it to you guys. Okay, very well. Let's go ahead and let me see if there's any other questions and anything else coming in. Okay, Ken Smiley has a question on YouTube. He says, how early before your first show are you prepping for weather reports? I guess that's more of a professional question for you guys. How early are you guys prepping?
I can speak in the morning. I'm always in the office by about 2:20, 2:30 in the morning. And we go on TV at 4:30. So usually about 2 hours before airtime is when I'm kind of doing that. I think that's pretty typical for most of us. We're kind of getting in 2 hours before showtime. I know Matt and Greg are coming in 2 hours before the evening newscast, trying to compile the latest models, compile the latest data. We're also utilizing our previous Mets forecast. Like I would look at what Matt and Greg compiled last night to try and see if there's any variation to that the morning after, or if there's any variation in the models, then making some minor tweaks and adjustments. But usually it's just based on what we've been saying the days before, especially when our pattern isn't that too complex across Southwest Florida. Now that we're getting these cold fronts, it gets a little more complex back and forth with timing and those features, but usually myself, it's about 2 hours of preparation and making the graphics and all that good stuff that goes into forecasting the weather for the day ahead.
Yeah, I would say 2 hours, and I think people don't really think about the fact that we are making our own forecasts. We're looking at all those models to make those predictions and make those graphics, which Zach makes some really great graphics, so that we can share that forecast with you. And
Zach's graphics.
This is like something a little kind of off the topic, but I get this question so often, and people want to know if we're reading from a teleprompter. And no, we are not. We are ad-libbing. That's why we're making those forecasts, because we want to have that information in our head ready for you guys. So sharing a little bit of that, because I get that question constantly.
Yeah, right now we're just staring straight into, usually we can see ourselves, we're just staring into a black void, looking at the camera, staring at us back, and then we can kind of see in the periphery behind us and around us that we have all the ladies on the screen, but
Yeah, hopefully that's going to change soon. According to our news director, we're going to have a nice streaming room shortly once we move into the new building. So we'll be able to have a nice streaming center.
Yeah. Deep teas, we call it in the business.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Oh, Ken says, thanks, Zach, for answering the question. So yeah, shout out to Ken. Yeah, guys, we're taking your questions. If you have any for our panel of vets, we're here for you. Okay, I know that we're going to move on now, because I know that, Oceana, you have a hurricane tip of the day.
Yep.
What do you have for us? Go ahead, Andrew, punch 3.
So this one I've seen quite a bit, but my grandmother actually brought it up to me yesterday, and she was like, this is a good one to mention. So shout out to her. I'm mentioning it because it is a good tip, and it's to freeze a lot of water bottles when you know you're about to lose power, and you're going to want to keep them in your freezer because they actually stay frozen longer than ice will when they're wrapped in that plastic like that. And it helps keep your food cold, and when they melt, you'll have fresh drinking water. So it's kind of a win-win in all all realms here. So I would highly recommend just getting a case, put it in your freezer, and the same goes for your refrigerator as well. I mean, I know it's always a great idea to, you know, remove all the items, all the food from your freezer and your fridge before a hurricane, just because, you know, likely that we will have a power outage, but this is a good idea. I like this tip a lot, and I think that's something I'm gonna start adding to my arsenal of hurricane preparation.
Go Oceana's grandma
I
for that tip
know.
of the day. And you know, little physics thing on top of that. You might want to empty a little bit of water from some of those water bottles
good idea.
because as the liquid begins to, of course, freeze, the molecules get bigger and bigger. More air between those molecules that expands, and yeah, we might get some frozen features in the freezer after that. But hey, at least it'll cover the steak. It'll keep the steak cold, that's for sure.
Yeah, it will.
There you go. Thank you so much for that, Oceana. Guys, another question coming through. It says, are tornadoes in Florida generally less destructive than in other states?
Well, I think for us here in Southwest Florida, tornadoes are generally EF 0s, 1s. Sometimes we'll get 2s. Yesterday, we were talking about the anniversary of Milton, which is when we had our strongest tornado in Southwest Florida history, which was an EF 3. Now, I previously worked in the Florida Panhandle, and they get some wicked tornadoes up there. They're closer to that tornado alley where you're getting this warm, moist air coming in off of the Gulf, interacting with these storms moving over the Rockies, and that just leads to these strong storms that can produce some really nasty tornadoes. So I think through the Panhandle, you can definitely get some nasty tornadoes there. But for us here in Southwest Florida, luckily, those tornadoes tend to be on the weaker end of the scale.
And a little add to that, a little extra addition is that the typical reason why is why us here in the peninsula, especially farther down here, we don't get those strong tornadoes is because we rarely have the dry air feature higher in the sky, usually at 15, 20,000 feet in any severe weather setup. You have all the moisture surging in. You have to have that deep tropical moisture. Dew points, usually you want those above 65. We have those above 65 almost each and every day all summer long, and even most of the winter as well. But when you have that dry air higher in the sky, that dry air helps to add a little bit of this sinking feeling on one part of the storm while the other part of the storm is rising quickly, and that movement of that turbulence up and down within that storm mixed with the cooler air up above and the warmer air down below, that's what creates enough of that turning in the environment, and it allows those storms to keep feeding, the tornadoes to keep feeding in and of itself to get bigger and bigger, stronger and stronger. So we don't have those long tracking EF4s, EF5s like Arkansas or Oklahoma or Nebraska, or even the Panhandle of Florida sometimes, even through Mississippi and Alabama, because even though they are very much in the high dew point, high moisture content, low level feature across those regions, they still have that dry air high in the sky and those very cold temperatures high in the sky as well that could all play a role in that. So we rarely get that here just because it's far too warm and it's also far too moist high in the sky across the peninsula of Florida almost all year round.
Very good, very good. So also talking about what we do get here are cold fronts, well, cold in parentheses, in quotations. We are having a cold front headed our way, pushing through Saturday into Sunday, but we still expect a few PM storms probably Saturday afternoon as the front pushes through, and then Sunday, that's where it starts getting really nice. Expect a cooler morning with temperatures in those upper 80s. We're gonna have less humid conditions. And you can expect to start off the rest of your work week with comfortable mornings and lots of sun in the afternoon. We're staying dry, less muggy as well, very pleasant in the mornings, no rain on Wednesday, and again, mostly sunny. And we have a question coming in, and I wanted to tie this to this question because it comes up a lot, you guys. We did touch on it yesterday. And Ellen Purdy, she wants to know, will this front start to kill hurricanes from forming? And it's a similar question to what we saw yesterday, which somebody asked, well, I understand this front might kill rainy season. Could it also kill any hurricane threats headed our way? So let's go ahead and answer this for all these folks that are trying to, to find out if this front will kill any hurricane threats.
Well, I think that it would take multiple fronts to try to put an end to any hurricane threats because sea surface temperatures are still abnormally warm. As long as they're in the 80s, we still have the capability for these tropical systems to develop and head our way. Now, one thing that I believe Zach was talking about yesterday, those frontal boundaries can shield us from these tropical systems, but I still think there's a potential, and also you have to look at the timing of where these fronts are situated, because if they're in the right spot, they could actually maybe steer something into our direction.
Very good. So I hope you guys have anything to add to that.
Yeah, on that, fronts always come with wind shear, which we always think about the water temperatures being dangerous. It's something we have to watch, but the wind shear is always the biggest proponent. You can have water temperatures at 100 degrees, but if you have wind shear, nothing is going to pop up or nothing is going to form. And we know these fronts always come with a lot of wind shear, so that's something that can limit any development from popping up, so they can often be a source for keeping anything tropically related away from the entire state. But just like anything, just because you have the front come through, it doesn't mean that it stays to the south, that it sits there for months on end, and it hangs out and it moves in. No, you have that front, it erodes away, it takes on the characteristics of the tropics, and it eventually disappears. And then you have this lingering movement dynamics of the atmosphere where you can get lows develop along that old old boundary that's still left over. So you always have to keep in mind that even though the front could keep us blocked at first, and like Nikki mentioned, it could also lead to some future development. So it's something we're always watching with each and every front that moves its way into the Gulf this time of year, because just because it saves us for a week doesn't mean it doesn't for the following week. So it's something to always keep in mind on. Thankfully, right now, that's nothing we're seeing with this front. I have not seen any indication, any guidance that says this front will do anything or develop into anything, so that's some good news, but it's something we have to watch each and every hurricane season.
Very good. Ken Smiley says, thank you, Nikki and Oceana. I guess that you answered his question in terms of how your work style is and how early you come in to work. Andy W., he says, hey, Val. Hey, Andy, what's up? Where are you watching us from? Thank you for joining the stream. Ellen Purdy has another question. She says, what about hurricanes coming from... And that's, what do you mean, Ellen? What about hurricanes coming from where? We're going to wait until Ellen completes her question there, but we're here for you, Ellen.
Up. You know, when we get to 11:30, we jump off on a Friday.
Zach's
sounding a little sick in and of itself anyway, so just saying.
We have a few more minutes. Okay, and then I know that we're also, we had mentioned that there's a nor'eastern that's going to be happening here this weekend as well, bringing lots of gusty winds and showers for our northeast areas. And I know that, Nikki, you were working on something for our Signs in 60 Seconds. I'm going to punch that into the screen, Andrew.
Yeah, I was talking about there's two different types of nor'easters. Now, the one that's going to be impacting the Atlantic coast throughout this weekend into early next week is called a Miller A. So basically, it's an area of low pressure that develops typically off of a frontal boundary closer to Georgia to New Jersey. That's typically the framing of where you would see these areas of low pressure develop. And then as they work their way to the north, more so towards New England, they really begin to intensify. Now, they get the name nor'easter because the winds over land are typically coming in from the northeast. So that's really where that name comes from. A lot of times they will bring some icy, snowy conditions, but this particular nor'easter that's going to be impacting the Atlantic and into New England, not going to be bringing any snow or ice. It is expected to bring about 5 inches of rainfall through some areas, especially through the Carolinas. That's where you could see some heavy rainfall, which could lead to some flash flooding, especially since they've been dealing with some tropical weather and they've seen their fair share of rain as of late. Now, there's another type of nor'easter that could develop, basically an area of low pressure that moves in from the west, so it tracks across the country. It weakens as it approaches the Appalachian Mountains, and then once it crosses over the mountains and works its way closer to the Atlantic coast, it could re-intensify and then again work its way towards New England and lead to those northeasterly winds over land and being called a nor'easter as well. So nothing that we really deal with for us here in Florida, but it could develop close to home and then impact our friends to the north.
Okay, thank you, Nikki. Thank you for that. So it won't impact us here in Southwest Florida at all. Nothing for us to worry about. So there you go, guys. Okay, we have a couple more questions. It's ramping up here on our YouTube channel. Ellen says, what about hurricanes forming where Helene and Milton came from? She also adds, love you guys, best weather team. So that's from Ellen. I guess that she's referring to how does the front affect hurricanes forming where Helene and Milton. Does anybody want to answer that?
Well, Milton was, it developed out in the Gulf, and like Zach was saying, those frontal boundaries, they could fall apart in the Gulf. Basically, there's still some spin there that tropical system could develop off of. And I think that's why we focus one of the reasons why we focus our attention in the Gulf through this time of the year, because we do have an increase in those fronts moving across the country and then fizzling out before they make it very far south. So that's one of the reasons why we keep our eyes on the Gulf around this time of the year.
We're going to take one more question.
And say if there was an Ian real quick, because I know it's 11:32, but say if there was like an Ian or if there was a Helene that was trying to develop in the Caribbean and we had a front moving through, Ellen, it would block that system. It would cause that system to either move west towards Mexico or east along that front and move off towards the northeast over Puerto Rico and out to the Atlantic. So if there was a storm that was developed south of that front and that front was passing through, physically speaking, it would block that system from coming to southwest Florida. So that's how that would truly interact with what would be out there.
Last question, guys, and then we have to go. This one is from Ken. He says, are we getting more hurricanes and stronger hurricanes in recent years?
We've had 4 hurricanes so far this year and I think 85 million tropical storms. So in years past, I would say yes. This year proves that we aren't having as many hurricanes as we've had in recent years. So I would say it's always one of those things to toss up each and every season. But ladies, do you have anything to add, I think, to that?
Well, I think, okay, we've had 4 hurricanes. 3 of those have already been major hurricanes, just because those conditions have been ripe. But like Zach was saying, every season is different because of the conditions we have in place, whether we're ENSO neutral, El Nino, La Nina. So those things all have an impact on what our season's going to look like.
And each storm is different. It behaves differently. You could have Karen subtropical at 44.5 degrees north, and you could have Jerry falling apart thanks to wind shear. So yeah, anything could really happen depending on the dynamics that are set up when the storm does pop up.
Guys, we don't have time for takeaways today, and I want to thank you all so much for joining the panel, and thank you all so much if you're tuned in, if you have joined our streaming. I want to wish you all a great weekend. Enjoy. It's going to be lovely if you're here in Southwest Florida. We'll catch you next time. Bye.